Hi guys, we have to talk about Campi Flegrei in southern Italy near Naples with over 3 million people in that densely populated area. Campi Flegrei is one of the most dangerous volcanoes in the world and it keeps rumbling there. So basically what I want to tell you today in this video, and I find this quite scandalous, it's really mind-blowing what one official has said in light of the recent announcement that they're working on an evacuation plan and that they want to basically rehearse that at the end of October. And they have released a list yesterday where they would place people from the red zone area around Campi Flegrei, where in other provinces they would place them, the 80,000 people that live in Pozzuoli to Lombardia and stuff like this. But I always said, well, we know this volcano and even Vesuvius, the red zone of Vesuvius, if Vesuvius erupted, there was no time to run away. So officials are always talking, well, Brady seism, that's a land rise and a land subsidence that comes with seismic activity. They're only talking about that when they talk about their evacuation plans. But we have to take in mind that there could be a volcanic eruption. And if it's only a small volcanic eruption, like it was roughly 400 years ago, all the medieval villages around Campi Flegrei were destroyed immediately. So Campi Flegrei stretches around an area of 100 kilometers and also into the sea, into the Gulf of Pozzuoli. And it has been relatively quiet the last few days after the last earthquake swarm that we saw in that area, with another large earthquake that topped the list of 3.7. There was another one of 3.5. So overall, they have released a bulletin for May, over 1,500 earthquakes in the month of May alone, and it looks like June will follow. So it is an increased seismicity with an increased land rise. And so what happened last night? So the press speaks of the strongest earthquakes of 1.5, but that's not true. At the moment, the press did release that. Later in the night, something else happened. So press says starting at 1:30 a.m. and continuing until the morning of June 17th, a seismic swarm affected the residents at the Campi Flegrei. Tremors and small explosions were felt by the population. And we know these earthquakes, they come with a weird sound. I've played you that sound in some of my other videos, so watch it. It's very, very interesting. Like a roar, some did sound like as if a missile is incoming. It was like zzz, boom, right? It's really, really scary. That's why people were running out on the streets and completely confused. And now these people are being rattled again and again and again. And authorities said, yeah, we have to spend between 500,000 and 700,000 euros to upgrade the buildings, to seismically upgrade these buildings in the red zones. But all that, as I said, will not help you if there is a volcanic eruption. Well, it will help if there's a seismic swarm before the eruption will happen, and there will be. And then, these buildings, if they collapse and block the road, that's not good, right? So therefore, yeah, that makes sense, but they think there'll be a warning time of 72 hours, and they think they have 72 hours to evacuate these areas. And I said it yesterday, I have my doubts. But, let's talk about this earthquake swarm. So it was basically going on all through the morning, but then in the evening again. And you can see it here on the list what the Vesuvius Observatory, the Italian Institute of Volcanology and Geology, INGV, has released. There was another one, and that was even stronger. So magnitude 1.8 did occur at 9:30 p.m. on June 17th Italian time. And all these quakes are centered around that one crater that is called Solfatara. We know there's a lot of craters in that area. The last eruption was happening at Monte Nuovo. And now it's basically concentrated all the activity on Pozzuoli that basically sits right on and around that volcano and that area where we have the epicenters of these earthquake swarms. So this is an earthquake swarm that we're dealing with here that is stretching out as far as time goes. So it'll be interesting to see if there will be even more, because it was like time in between. So you can see, for example, at 11 a.m. magnitude 1.2, and then at 7:30 p.m. 1.3, and then we have the 1.8 at 9:30. So it's stretched out quite a little bit. But these earthquake swarms, they also come with smaller earthquakes, but you know, the ones that they're really measuring is the bigger ones. So what we can see here is the earlier in the morning, how it started, like 1:35, magnitude 1.4, and then basically a few seconds, 1.5, 5 minutes later, 6 minutes later, 1.3, the same time another one, 1.0. So there you go. This is what's happening, and it's been spanning out over a whole day, and maybe it will continue into the next day. We will have to see. And in light of that, I want to talk to you about something that I always said and suspected and knew in my heart when they were talking about evacuation plans and stuff like that. There was an interview, and let's go through this. I mean, it is very, very concerning. I found an article that quotes Minister Musumeci, and his quotes, or what he is saying, he's basically telling the truth. And I think, yeah, we cannot put our heads in the sand here, despite the fact that it is very upsetting and very, I don't even find the right words, saddening, confusing, shocking, I don't know. So this article, it's basically a newspaper. They're writing about the alarming seismic activity that we're seeing at Campi Flegrei, and that a successful evacuation would be doubtful. And why would it be doubtful? Let's hear what Minister Musumeci has said. He said, like a few weeks ago, it was a crime to have allowed the settlement of over 80,000 people in that area. That is basically Pozzuoli, the Pozzuoli area and the surrounding areas of these craters. They're basically settling on these calderas, on these craters, on the edges of these craters. Nello Musumeci is the Minister of the Civil Protection. So he knows, he's responsible for evacuation plans, for coordination. And we know 2 weeks ago, he just signed the decree to order the extraordinary mobilization of the National Civil Defense Service to support the province of Campania, the region Greater Naples area, more than 3 million people. And he said in an interview, I have thus accepted the request of the president of that region in order to cope with the critical situation that was determined in the Phlegraean fields, Campi Flegrei, after that huge seismic event on May 20th, when there was a 4.4 magnitude earthquake, the largest that this region has seen in over 40 years. But that's not the shocking quote that I mean, guys. Stay with me for a second and then you'll hear what I mean. So he's talking about the ongoing Brady seism phenomenon. But you know, phenomenon, we have to understand what Brady seism is. It's a land uplift and a land subsidence because of something that is going on underground. Magma trying to reach the surface, magmatic fluids, gases. So something's rumbling underneath. He is basically also talking about seismic upgrades, the Brady seism situation with earthquakes. I feel a little bit they're all scared to put the word in their mouth, volcanic eruption, a potential eruption of Campi Flegrei, and that's what a lot of scientists are saying. So residents are really worried because they're sitting in one of the most densely populated areas in the world. And this area sits on top of a potential supervolcano. Not only the recent alarming seismic activity is scaring the residents, but also if you really listen to what Musumeci is saying, if you read in between the lines, but if you really just hear what he's saying, that's already enough to scare the S out of you, I would say. So he basically said safety, to talk about safety in the face of such a phenomena of Brady seism. He's only talking about the Brady seism. Safety does not exist. It's a relative fact. That are his words. And we have to understand what he's saying. There is no safety. They can try to come up with some evacuation plans. I mean, they were drawing up an evacuation plans for only 350,000 people in the area around the recent epicenters. And for only for 143,000, they actually have a plan. They say they have 500 bus drivers that should be ready with buses in case of an evacuation. And the other 200,000, they should go for themselves. But do you really think, should there be a volcanic eruption or big rattling, that the rest of the millions of people would just sit there and see if they're going to be killed by this eruption or not? So complete panic would break out everywhere. I don't think the buses would even get through, or the bus drivers would even wait for everyone to get in their buses. They would just get out and leave. But the problem is there even time to do that? And I bring you the example of Vesuvius again. Nope. Around 500,000 people, 700,000 people in the direct area of Vesuvius. No chance to escape if this thing erupts. So the minister speaks about the yellow alert, and I have just released a video raising the question, why has the alert level not been increased? Because last year, at the end of last year, when they had all these earthquake swarms already, they said, if these earthquake swarms continue and the Brady seism and everything, we will have to raise the alert level, which means evacuation triggers of prisons, hospitals, and voluntary evacuation of people who live in that area. But that hasn't happened. But the seismic swarms keep continuing. The land rise has even doubled, has increased, but the alert is not being raised. So he speaks about, yeah, they're maintaining the yellow alert while urging for maximum attention. And then he speaks about his evacuation rehearsals, that it's so important that these exercises are carried out with the full involvement of the population of around 80,000 inhabitants of the Pozzuoli area, and 30,000 of those guys are located in the area of the greatest risk. But let's be honest, all of them are. And he's speaking about like 4,000 buildings in the area, and 1,250 are deemed to be at high seismic risk. So they say the other ones are to be at medium seismic risk. So he wants to do upgrades to these buildings. And he said, quote, it's a complex situation, especially when we look at the urban density of that area. And he says it was a crime to have allowed the settlement of over 80,000 people in that area. He said it should have been regulated. The coexistence had to be regulated, coexistence with the volcano without high density settlements as it has now occurred. But you have to see these settlements happened over decades, right? These are old buildings. It's not like that this was modern urban planning, but they still kept going with new construction. And I'll talk to you about this, what the residents are saying, because many residents in that area are saying, well, you can't fool us. We are staying because the government is basically investing billions in new structures in the area. They're saying the fact that the government and local institutions, as well as private individuals and multinationals, are continuing to invest significantly in this area, building houses, hospitals, clinics in the red zone, and directing huge resources, often public resources, for example, at the redevelopment of a former area that they call Italsider. The government has just allocated over €1 billion, and these construction sites will begin very, very shortly. Construction will begin there very, very shortly, or has already began, as you see in the picture. So the residents are saying it's difficult to think that they have all gone mad. And so one resident said that, who lives only a few meters away from the Solfatara crater. So the resident says, so there are two things: either economic interests prevail over the seismic risks. And she said, and if that were the case, we should be worried, or the risk is such as to allow the continuation of a 1,000-year coexistence between inhabitants and seismic events, provided that the buildings are made safe, as happens, for example, in Japan, where they have coexisted with earthquakes for millennia. So nobody is speaking about the volcanic eruption. This has to be made more clear. And now let's get to the point. What has Musumeci said that gives you shivers? I'll tell you now. When he speaks about that it was a crime to let people settle there, he says, and listen carefully, given the situation that an efficient evacuation in the event of a catastrophic explosion, eruption, or earthquake would probably be impossible. So he says it's impossible to evacuate if there is a volcanic eruption or even stronger earthquakes. He says it. So all these evacuation rehearsals, in my opinion, is just to put like a false feeling of safety, or spread this false feeling of safety amongst the population. What else can they do? They could only do a drastic step and evacuate everyone right now and permanently resettle everyone, for example, into the areas that they have outlined where they would resettle people should there be a disaster and people would have to evacuate. So they would have to do this now. But he really says it, an efficient evacuation in the event of a catastrophic explosion or earthquake would probably be impossible. Probably means high likelihood, right? There's potentially, there's possibly, but if you say probably, it means, yeah, it is almost a fact, right? He says that in the future, the government will include an absolute ban on any other construction of residential buildings, cubic capacity for residential buildings in the Campi Flegrei area that is affected by the Brady seismic phenomenon. But, if this area that has this Brady seismic phenomenon will have a volcanic eruption, that is affecting all the other highly densely populated areas as well. Of course, he says it is not possible to develop a removal plan on the one hand and an urban development plan on the other hand, and that is correct. So either plan for removing everyone But if you keep developing, yeah, it doesn't match together very well. The conclusion is that for the short term, the increasing seismic activity in one of the most dangerous areas in the world, coupled with an unforeseen population density and structures that are frequently not seismic resistant, creates an alarming condition that bears close monitoring. But by monitoring, what can you change, guys? Let me know what you think. What is the solution? Should they resettle? Should they start to resettle people now and give up that area? What should they do? What is the best thing to do in your opinion? It is not an easy decision. I have to say that. So let me know, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you're interested in what's going on in Campi Flegrei, please check out my playlist about Campi Flegrei. Check out one of the videos here in the end screen, and please like this video to push it out a little bit more through the YouTube algorithm. And if you're new here, please subscribe. So guys, thank you so much for being here on my channel and for supporting me. I'll see you very, very soon. Stay safe. Take care. Bye-bye.